By 6:30 local time, the Black Sea had been calm enough to deceive anyone not paid to care. Low waves, cold air, empty sky. No sooner was it skimming along directly over the water than the Ukrainian Beaver drones were already swarming, and the slick oil terminal of Russia was in their path. It should have been routine to the operators back in Ukraine. Launch, cruise, drop low, hit the target. Done. What they were not aware of was that there were two Russian Su-30 fighters that were already in the air. The jets were on a combat air patrol, or the air equivalent of patrolling the hallway outside a locked room. Same racing track design, keep on going round and round until something violates the rules. The radar of the lead pilot flicked with a contact that was not there, and he swiveled sharply into a bank. The sight of the range made him know all he had to know. 120 miles. That won them perhaps 12 minutes until the drones went dead of radar off the sea surface. The Su-30s compacted their noses out of the air, throttled her off, but not into afterburner. Afterburner was a luxury. Currency was fuel, and they would require each drop. The first pilot changed his radar to active on the 90 miles mark. The change was dramatic, such as replacing a flashlight with a stadium floodlight. Radar energy entered the airspace and ricocheted off clouds, waves, and any other objects that dared to reflect it. Nothing. He opened the scan up to 70 degrees and then 120. More coverage, less detail. A wide shot rather than a close-up. Still, nothing useful. And that was the problem. Radar loves speed. Fighter jets fly by scopes like sirens, and their Doppler shifts cannot be missed. These drones were different. They were blown along at a speed of about 150 knots like litter blown by the wind. They appeared strangely like waves to the radar of the filters, which are set to reject ocean clutter. Precisely, the system was operating as intended. Just not for this war. Russia had deployed its fighters into an airspace pocket called CAT box, which was designed to intercept high-speed, low-level bombers as they approached the coast. The geometry presupposed the use of American airplanes, not Ukrainian drones creeping on the waves like beetles. The radar was able to see 200 miles with a high elevation. Get down to the wave top of a target, and that sight was reduced to 40. Something, at least, broke through at 6:34. Not radar, but heat. The infrared search and track system blazed with little warm spots in the cold sea. A dozen of them, maybe more, as cigarette spurts in the dark. We are 38 miles out and near. The drones were continuing to fly higher than necessary, conserving fuel. Yet that would change any second. The stick was pushed forward by the lead pilot who dived. Numbers on the radar altimeter had turned like a slot machine. 25,000, 20, 15. He had seconds. As soon as the drones fell, they would disappear. He flattened at 12,000 feet and got the bunch into line. The gun reticle jumped over the several targets as they commenced a predetermined descent. He squeezed the trigger. A short burst. 30mm shells shot in almost a mile before they struck a target. One of the drones burst and wheeled off the water. One kill. Then the sea engulfed the rest. The drones plunged down 2,000 feet and then in less than 200 in the surf, were lost in the debris of the surface as coins tossed into dark water. The Russian pilots gawked at radar displays that instantly had no meaning, and the swarm kept moving. The Black Sea had gone hostile in a very particular manner as viewed through the cockpit of the Su-30. The drones hadn't vanished. They had only learned how to conceal themselves without being noticed. Every Beaver drone was equipped with a radar altimeter that shot 40 pulses a second straight down at the water. It held them at a certain height, about 60 meters in the wave. At a swell leveraging them, they ascended. As the sea dropped, they went with it. The drones were not conspicuous to a fighter radar looking off sideways on the surface. They blended, same speed as the waves, same altitude band, same mess of reflections. They were not targets in the eyes of the radar. They were weather. The Russian pilots attempted to get used to it. The lead changed his radar to the velocity search mode, which instructed the system to disregard anything that was not traveling between 100 and 200 knots. Theoretically, that should have blocked the sea and made the drones stand out. As a matter of fact, nonsense was put out on a grand scale. Wind-driven spray, crests of the waves which go with the morning breeze. A flock of seabirds flying by north was as bright as a black plotting board. The radar was more of an approximation than of a measuring tool and sounded like a lunch counter in a fast food kitchen. Beeps overlapping, alerts everywhere, no certainty anywhere. The wingman fell lower to 8,000 feet, hoping that angle would do what software had failed to accomplish. Rather, it has caused a different issue. Fuel. The engines of SU-30 were made as thin air. Up high, they were efficient. Down low, they were gluttons. Flight at 8,000 feet consumed fuel in a hideous manner. A minute at lowland is as expensive as 5 minutes in high gear at a sporting car's speed. They'd launched at 4:30. The clock had become no longer friendly. Pursue the drones and run the risk of burning out in the ocean. And lose them. Both climb upward again. The move was no longer strategic. It was arithmetic. The call was made by ground control at 6:37. The combat troops dragged in with afterburners brightening the morning sky as they tore back at their posting point. The engagement was over. 5 minutes of contact. 1 drone destroyed. 23 still inbound. Only the fighters were the first layer. The S-300 batteries at Tuapse were already in the watch at 53 miles inland. The passing of air patrol handoff to ground defense was taking place on a real-time basis. Screens were flickering as operators attempted to make chaos into tracks. Then the jewel of the system lived. The 64N6E radar, which was called Big Bird, ceased its infrequent spinning and changed to sector scan. Imagine a lighthouse which all at once ceases to turn about and throws all its light out in a single direction. It was Big Bird, except that, instead of light, it threw radio waves of 350 kilowatts of power, sufficient electricity to serve a small neighborhood, all concentrated on a low piece of sky. On paper, it was able to identify fighter jets at 300 kilometers. These weren't fighter jets. The size of a large seagull went to make up the radar cross-section of each Beaver drone. On a good day, a half meter. That reduced the effective range of Big Bird and in best conditions to about 80 kilometers. This morning was not ideal. Contacts blinked in and out. 12, 7, 15, 4. The supersonic targets were predictable, and the tracking software could not make any sense of slow and drifting dots that continued to slip under the radar horizon. It was as trying to count the leaves rafting over the pond. And time was running out. The drones were still coming. The commander of the S-300 battery realized what had happened immediately. He didn't need a briefing. He had enough of the screen before him. The drones were low. Very low. Low enough that the Earth itself was going against him due to curvature. Radar rays move in a line fashion. The planet does not. The drone that was over the sea, 60 meters higher than Big Bird, almost only burst the radar horizon at about 22 kilometers, based on the height of his antennas. That provided the system with a thin margin. It could take a maximum of 3 minutes to identify, categorize, lock down, and destroy over 20 targets. There is nothing like 3 minutes in air defense. The songs on the screen could not cooperate. One of the sweeps depicted 12 contacts. The next showed 7, then 15. The drones broke the surface and disappeared like fishes in and out of the waves. The automatic tracking program attempted to assist, however. It was trained to follow missiles and jets, and not on something that acted like floating debris with opinions. Then came the cost problem. The price of every 48 N6 missile was about $2 million. Each drone was approximated to cost $50,000. Burn them all, and the battery would burn out its magazine on airing ghosts. Delay too long, and the drones would make the coast before they were destroyed. Contemporary war is reduced to a spreadsheet at times. The commander issued the order at 6:42 when the front units had gone 65 kilometers. Engage now, or not at all. 4 starting tubes blasted off one after another. The missiles flew up columns of fire and, instead of flying directly out into the sea, they climbed hastily upwards in columns of fire. This wasn't a mistake. It was an up-up shot, as of a quarterback who passes on high. The idea was simple: air assault, in which the drones would have been more visible against the water rather than becoming part of it. At 15,000 meters, the first missile spilled over. Its search radar sprang and started painting the ocean beneath. In that 5 square kilometers area of sea, there were drones at 150 knots that were 60 meters above the sea. It was like searching a particular car in the car park of a mall using a helicopter. Technically possible, practically miserable. The seeker found something, a clean return. Correct speed, slightly elevated. The missile bent sharply, making a 30 Gs commitment. 8 seconds. 5, 2. The fuse, which was in proximity, exploded, and tungsten fragments flew through the air. The contact vanished. A kill. Except it was pure chance. That drone had flown a moment to get out of the way of an antenna of a fishing vessel. A momentary mistake. Bad luck for Ukraine. Good luck for Russia. The second missile did not have so much luck. Its pursuer had closed on what appeared to be 3 drones flying in line with each other. When it fell, the formation disintegrated into wave crests that moved at precisely the correct speed. The missile had been pursuing sea spray. It exploded, and a harmless plume of water was thrust into the air in the morning. The third and fourth missiles did not do so well. When they became operative, the swarm had dispersed over a 20-kilometer front. No strong returns, no clear targets, nothing to lock onto. 4 missiles fired, 1 drone destroyed, $6 million spent, and now the rest of the drones were within 30 kilometers. The geometry completely broke down at that range. The missiles were not maneuverable enough to strike such slow targets that were low. The communication bar was closed down. At 6:45, ground control reported that there were 22 tracks still in being. Russia could no longer defend itself kinetically. It was electronic. Something strange started to happen to the drones at 15 kilometers of Tuapse. The GPS receivers had indicated ideal strength, 12 satellites, clean geometry, no warning flags. Paper-wise, navigation appeared perfect. As a matter of fact, the position data began leaping about like a faulty compass. At one point, the drones thought that they were flying over open water. The following, they were 100 and more meters inland, then back out to sea, then within space which physically should not have been. The Pole 21 system of electronic warfare of Russia had been turned on. Pole 21 did not consist of one great jammer. It was a network. There are dozens of small transmitters spread on the rooftop, cell towers, and industrial buildings around the port. They produced on average just 20 watts of power, which was no more powerful than a desk lamp. They were, however, transmitting at the same frequencies as GPS and GLONASS satellites. The drones were attempting to hear murmurs in space, messages 20,000 kilometers distant. Pole 21 was screaming at them out of a couple of kilometers on the road. Worse still, it was not only interference with GPS, it was lying to it. Individual transmitters sent counterfeiting satellite signals that had different timings. The drone receivers did not believe they were flying through drone mode, as they were executing the same maths that they always ran. 4 distances joining to provide a position. Simple, elegant, completely wrong. The computer of the lead drone indicated the issue in a matter of 2 seconds. Position solutions were leaping excessively. GPS was compromised. The system was changed to inertial navigation. Dead reckoning, the gyroscopes and accelerators followed all the movements relative to the last position of the good. However, these were not military systems. They were trade MM's sensors, good enough in short distances but likely to be inaccurate. In the absence of GPS correction, the error increased at a rate of about 10 meters per minute. With more than 12 kilometers, it was too much to miss the target. This is what the planners of Ukraine were anticipating. Pole 21 transmitters had been mapped by electronic intelligence flights months before, and their signal fingerprints recorded. The mission used the assumption that the last approach will be GPS denied. This was why every drone had a camera and a limited pattern matching system. At 6 minutes 51, the camera of the front drone caught the most noticeable landmark of the refinery, a red and white striped 140 meters high catalytic cracking tower. The computer verified the live image with stored references and re-snapped the navigation solution back in position. The map itself was the land. More landmarks followed. The pier in the form of Y, which leads to the Black Sea. The storage tanks are geometrical grid. The figure of the coastal highway. Inertial drift was countered in real time by each visual match. Crude, but effective. At 6:30, the first drone shot down. Its camera was fixed on the octagonal structure where 6 major pipes were merged. The export manifold. It passed a flow of oil less than 800 psi per second. The inertia system had shifted 47 meters to the east. The visual lock got it slack on track. The drone flew between 2 stacks of flares, the flames only meters away and hitting its wings. Then impact. The warhead exploded as a sledgehammer on glass. Valves shattered, flanges tore loose. The pressurized oil was forced out in the form of a vapor cloud which rolled over the plant. Another drone hit a tanker anchored on the sea 8 seconds later, and it exploded around the cargo manifold. Pipes sheared. Vapor inundated rooms that were never intended to. Physics did not bother with emergency systems being triggered. More drones followed. Arms were torn off by the loading. Storage tanks split open. Concrete is covered with burning pools. A pipeline bridge collapsed. A government office came under direct fire, and the drone seemingly targeted the clean grid of HVAC roofs. Tuapse oil terminal was completed by 6:55. Black smoke was drifting in the morning sky, and it could be seen by the space. One of the facilities, which handled about 8% of Russian seaborne crude exports, had disappeared not due to inadequacy in defenses, but due to the construction being of a different period. Low-cost drones had overtaken costly systems, and the sea had aided them in concealment. What happened at Tuapse wasn't just an attack on a refinery, it was a preview, a glimpse of how modern war is quietly changing, where the smallest machines slip through the biggest defenses. And next time, the target may not be oil, ships, or ports, but something far closer to home. You now know the facts, but strategy is always open to interpretation. Subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdowns, and share your perspective in the comments. In a battle space where every sensor can be deceived, what should militaries trust most? Data, doctrine, or human judgment? Because the analysis doesn't end with this video, it begins with you.